U.S. position, every year everybody hopes that the U.S. will come in with a strong position that will unlock the paralysis in the talks. I've been coming to these for, this is my 11 years now, my 8th COP. And every time it seems everybody's hoping for the U.S. to come around, and each time we disappoint. And it's a source of, I guess I would say, disappointment as an American citizen. But the fact is that the change to the Obama administration from George W. Bush, when there was so much expectation in Copenhagen as Obama came to his first climate change negotiation, that there would be a new position from the U.S., but he's very constrained. He's constrained in part by the Senate in the U.S., of course, that passed the Byrd-Hagel resolution way back in 1997 that said we shall agree to no binding commitments unless China and India have also taken binding commitments in the same commitment period. But he's also constrained by the current, ability that he would need to get a supermajority in the Senate. Really, the Senate is a big difficulty, and then now, of course, we have a Republican majority in the House. So he is fighting uphill. He's forced to take most of the actions on the administrative level. That is, from his executive office through the EPA, Department of Energy, and so on, while the legislature really is playing very little role on climate change, unfortunately. So the position of the U.S., I think, has been very cautious. It's, we watch very closely the issue of climate finance, and we're always wishing the U.S. would do more. Mm-hmm. We're concerned in our observation and counting of the U.S. Contributions that the U.S. is counting many things that we would not consider to be climate aid necessarily. Some of it's supporting, investments by U.S. companies in developing countries, which is a good thing, that would those investments be in green energy or, low carbon development. But we would like to see more grant-based assistance, especially to the least developed countries.
So you've been here, you're a brave man. You've come back from an 8th conference. How would you assess how this one, or the feeling around this one, is different to perhaps 2 years ahead of the last time people tried to really develop a global treaty in Copenhagen? So I guess that would have been Bali. 2007, 2 years ahead of Copenhagen. What's your assessment of the atmosphere and also the different movements from around the world in terms of their progression towards a lower carbon kind of form of thinking?
Yeah. So in 2 years before Copenhagen was Bali, and at Bali we felt, I think there was more hope, but at the same time there was still the same tension between the global north and the global south, the rich and the poor countries. And there was, frustration during that time. Right through the end of the negotiations, there was sort of a miraculous ending that resulted in the Bali Roadmap, which was the result of very careful wording in 2 paragraphs, 2 little sub-paragraphs, that created this, the Bali Roadmap, and created a firewall, a difference between, cemented the difference between the wealthy countries and the poor. Mm-hmm. I think the big problem this year is people have seen it all before. The sort of the disappointment is building up, that people have the level of trust is quite low. I think I guess I would say that's a lot of the reason for the inability for us to sort of get moving in this COP, that there's a feeling that the promises that have been made before have not been well kept. There's just such a difference on, was the Copenhagen pledge of $30 billion in Fast Start Finance, was that met? So we get entirely different stories if we talk to Europe or the US on the one hand, or the least developed countries or the G77 on the other.
Just a final question. In terms of young people, and you work at a university, and through the Climate Development Lab, you work with a lot of young students who have an interest in this sector. From a university perspective, do you sense there is more interest in this through the young people you speak to? Is there that passion to resolve these challenges the world faces, or are students just more worried about short-term, I guess, more pressing concerns like finding a job and getting on in life?
I think it's a great question. So I've been teaching environmental studies for 2 decades, and it rises and falls. But the level of interest never goes to zero, and it never falls really below the level that it was before, so it keeps rising. Our program is growing in environmental studies. The Climate and Development Lab is booming. We just restarted this year after a year break when I was on leave, and we had a huge number of applicants, and we've been able to bring in 10 students to the COP. That's our record number for us. Our university saw great activism on the issue of divestment from coal, divestment from fossil fuels, a movement in the United States universities, which have seen hundreds and hundreds of students come out for protest actions, teach-ins, lectures, and so on. So I would say the interest is great, and the students are willing to, let's say, focus more on this common good issue and not just on careerism. I think it's a nice, and I have an amazing group of students that are very focused on doing something worthwhile. They also see the opportunity for some very exciting careers, so I think there's the both sides of this. But I think there is no shortage. I will notice a gender gap, however. Basically, we have, 8 women, 4 men, and sometimes it's in my classes it's 8 to 2. In other words, women are 70 to 80 to 90% of the people who are willing to take their lives, and use their lives to work on something as important as climate change.